Barbara, Marlon, if I could ask y'all to come up here and join me and take these seats, and we're going to have a little fireside chat. As they're coming up, to save a little time, let me go ahead and start with the introductions. They basically need no introduction, so they got the next best thing and no introduction today, and that's me. Marlon Humphrey, for those of you who don't know, was an All-American in high school. Anywhere's fine. In two sports, both football and track. He had many, many scholarship offers. He followed in his dad's footsteps, went to the University of Alabama, where he was an All-American. Defensive back, where he was on a national championship team with Coach Saban. And we're going to talk about that game a little bit later, the one with the onside kick against Clemson. He was a first-round draft pick. He has played his entire career thus far with the Baltimore Ravens, where he is a Pro Bowler. I'll go to Barbara. Barbara's not just here because she's Bobby's wife and Marlon's mom. She lettered in track and field 4 years at Jackson Olin High School, got a scholarship to go to University of UAB, where they were starting the track team, and I guess built it around this woman. She set a school record in the 400 meters, which still stands. We're going to talk about all Bobbies no longer stand at Alabama. I don't know how you did that, Barbara, but and she went back to Jackson Olin to coach track. She has coached at Simmons Middle School. Did I understand that when Marlon was in middle school, you were his track coach? Okay. How'd that work, Marlon?
It worked good.
All right. And she founded and coaches track at the Speed City Summer Track Club. And also has been chief of staff with 5 children, not just Marlon. Bobby Humphrey is a fellow Kiwanian, fellow quarterback club member, 2-time All-American running back at the University of Alabama. I was there, Bobby, the same 4 years of Johnny Musso, 68 to 72, and that's who I looked up to. Bobby smashed all of his records. When he graduated, he had 3,420 yards rushing, more 200-yard rushing games, 4 than anybody else, more 100-yard rushing games, 16 than anybody else. He's a first-round draft pick. He goes to play for the Denver Broncos. His rookie season, he rushed for over 1,000 yards. He was the AFC Conference Rookie of the Year. Following year, he rushed for over 1,000 yards, first Denver Bronco running back to have consecutive 1,000-yard seasons. He was a Pro Bowler, just like Marlon's a Pro Bowler. I could tell you more things about all of them. Let me just quickly say, when Bobby left the NFL, he came back to Birmingham, went into business, but at some point got drugged out of that and was enticed to become coach of the Birmingham Steel Dogs in the Arena Football League. And now he is vice president at Bryant Bank. Okay, Marlon, I want to start with you. And I don't want to spend a lot of time on this, but I'm just curious. You had blinding speed. You were a hurdler, which means you could have jumped over defenders even better than Najee Harris. I saw your NFL Combine video. You can find it online. You can find anything online, guys. And you got great hands because they have an exercise. You run horizontally. They just keep throwing passes at you. So why did you wind up playing defensive positions rather than following in Dad's footsteps?
I can't remember how old I was, but I can't remember how old I was, where I was, but my dad actually said, "Do you like getting hit, or would you rather hit somebody?" And for the most part, that kind of made sense to me. I said, well, honestly, sometimes you get hit, it kind of hurts your hands, all this. I said, when you hit somebody, it usually doesn't feel that bad. Now you hit Derrick Henry or something, you get run over, that kind of hurts. But I try not to hit those guys. But that basically was why I ended up going to the defensive side. Is my dad here just a simple question of, do you want to get hit or do you want to hit somebody? And that's all it took.
Okay, that sounds like the kind of question would have probably come from Mom in a lot of households. All right, now I'm going to ask the question that everybody in this room wants me to ask you, and I could probably ask it with just 2 words, and that's Nick Saban. Tell us what it was like to play for Coach Saban. What is the process from the perspective of a player? How did he motivate you? How come he wins so much? Is he, in fact, the GOAT? And tell us your best Coach Saban story, because I'm sure you got one.
I'd say it's a Nick Saban. I would say getting to Alabama. It's funny. Everyone here is in suits, and it's crazy. My first time meeting Saban, he's always he's always seems like whenever he's on the job, he is just all in on the job. I've seen him in many times in a full suit like this, doing footwork drills, showing me how I need to play corner. And he even did that the very first time I ever met him in his office. He was like, so you got to step like this, and you hear his heels clacking and all the things in his suit. But one of the biggest things I always say about Saban is he's always just focused on the task at hand. And whenever you leave, and he'll have the guys over for Thanksgiving, he'll have the guys over at his house during the summer. You would never think it's the same person. I just so happen to be one of those guys Saban used to sometimes raise his voice at sometimes. So it would be very unique that he would, that would happen an hour ago, and then we're at his house, and it's as if it didn't even happen. And I thought one of the biggest things I can say about Saban is whether if he got on you on a Thursday, the next day was a completely clean slate. And I think in today's world and just in general, it's very hard to be able to wipe something that day and just move on to the next. I think that's something I took from him. I really try to take that myself. I actually coached track and field at Hoover for 4 years, and that was something that I try to take to my, just because this athlete was doing this one day, the next day, you can't carry things over, and that's kind of how you should really live life. You can't really carry things over into things. Mistakes happen, things happen, but you move on. And then as far as the Saban story, times have changed. You got to get an iPhone, all that. This was back when he was trying hard to not adapt to the phone thing. So he had, I can't remember who he had running his phone for him for a while, but I guess it got too much. So where they're like, all right, Saban, you got to start figuring this thing out. And so I got to the point to where I was sitting next to him on the plane going to football games. And one time, before I had two unique stories. One time he leans over, he shows me some dip. He's like, you want some dip? And I'm like, and then he just starts laughing. So like he started to become a jokester. And then another time he was like, help me put this thing on airplane mode. And I'm like, Coach, that's like, I got you. And so I put it on airplane mode. But I think that was, as much as he kind of is known for, getting on guys and different things, man, he really became, you do have to start playing. Now, when I was not playing and I was, a freshman, he never really joked with me like that. But once I started playing a little more, I saw the funnier side of him. And he sometimes does throw the occasional joke. You just don't know if you're allowed to laugh. So he'll make some jokes, but you have to know, are you allowed to laugh? And so, but the airplane mode one was probably one of the funnier ones, just because he was very frustrated. We were about to take off for the plane, and he thought, I guess if he doesn't turn an airplane, we might crash or something. So he was like, dude, I give up, and handed me the phone. And so that's probably one of my favorite funny ones.
All right, now if I were to poll this group and say, what are all of your top 3, 4, 5 plays during the Saban era? Somebody would say Cody blocking the field goal at the end of the game. We beat Tennessee. Certainly everybody would say 2nd and 26. Tua, hits Devontae Smith in the end zone. We beat Georgia, win the national championship. Maybe somebody would say 4th and 31. Milroe heaves this pass in the far left corner of the end zone. Isaiah Bond leaps in the air. Somehow miraculously he comes down with it. We win. We beat Auburn, and then he heads to Texas through the portal. That's a different topic we'll get to. But certainly they would say the national championship game against Clemson and the onside kick. Y'all don't remember which Clemson game. This is the one that started off with the 50-yard touchdown run by Derrick Henry. O.J. Howard had 2 touchdowns, each in excess, receptions in excess of 50 yards. Kenyon Drake ended things with a 95-yard, just an electric kickoff return. It was that game. So here's the film. Let's watch the onside kick. And you can put on the audio too. All right, if you notice who caught that, he's wearing the same number his dad wore, 26. That's Marlon. Now look at this grin on Saban's face. You ever seen a grin like that on the sidelines? And then we're going to see a big grin on Marlon's face here in a second. Dabo's going crazy over there. Now watch his grin on Marlon's face. All right, Marlon, I got a bunch of questions about that play. I want to roll into, you can put it in one answer. Your special teams coach, Bobby Williams, I'm sure.
Caught it 15 yards.
Y'all practice onside kicks before every game, and you certainly did before that game. When did Coach Saban decide y'all were going to attempt the onside kick? What was it that they saw about the way Clemson was lining up that led y'all to believe it might work? What did he tell y'all on the sidelines when he got y'all over there to say we're going to do this? And then, am I correct in assuming it was supposed to come to your side of the field, and was it in fact supposed to come to you? And then we saw that grin. Just tell us what an exciting moment that all was. So talk about it.
Yeah, so that was that the whole thing was really, it was crazy. It was just crazy. Coach Bobby Williams, he only talked in yelling form. So even when he was just normally talking, that's when I remember it. You could be in the meeting and he only talked in yelling form. So that was his thing. But so we actually used to practice that every week, and they told us, you know, you might need it one of these days, blah blah. So we practice it. I mean, we literally practice it every single week during the special teams period, kind of for emergency type situation, trick play type situations. And yes, it was supposed to come to me. I was always the guy, and I don't know how many weeks there are in college, but I probably dropped the kick in practice. Oh, if it was 10 times, I probably dropped it 9 out of 10. So
I read that. I wasn't going to bring that up.
I was, Saban, as much as I know Saban being prepared, he's a big practice how you play. I was not thinking that probably would ever get called. I'm not really sure why they even kept me on that after continuing to drop it, but I guess he saw something. I don't know. So we didn't get told that week that was kind of in the books. I guess the coaches kind of kept that to themselves, and so whenever on kickoff, I was always the guy that I would do a sprint down and kind of just make sure I was warmed up before we even went before we took the field. And so it's national championship game. We're playing Clemson. We were going back and forth, so we did a lot of kickoff. And I always kind of was like off, kind of to the side of the huddle every single time. And so they all, like 3 guys, run up to me. Hey, we're doing the onside kick thing. And I'm like, I was surprised, 1, that we were calling it, and 2, I was like, if this is supposed to be a secret, you guys are not holding this in at all. I mean, you guys are like coming to me like, hey, we're gonna do the thing, and I'm like, well, you guys should calm down, so they don't see what's going on here. And so we go out there. I was trying to just stay on side, and obviously kicked it. It was up there, and I'm like, just please don't drop this, please don't. And I was able to catch it. So the moment was like super exciting, just because 1, I was like, all right, we didn't just give it away by everybody just freaking out over here on the sideline. That was good. I caught the ball, 2, and then thirdly, I didn't know if I was going to get hit when I caught the ball, so I also was like, let me get to the sideline. I don't know what they're going to think, but the whole thing was very a surreal moment, just because I messed it up quite a bit. It was crazy to see Saban smile like that, because he definitely does not do that during a game. But that moment was huge. I thought it was just tough to stop Deshaun Watson and all the weapons they had. It just seemed like it was a big offensive game on both sides of the ball.
I don't know if you've gone back and counted. We had the ball 16 times. They had the ball 15 times. So by breaking service on that onside kick, may have been the difference in the game, may have been an instance in which a coach actually scores points. Let me quickly ask the parents, because I was sitting in my den drinking a beer with my dog watching the game on a big screen, but I assume y'all were there.
Yes, we
What
were
was
there.
that moment like when they do the onside kick, which is pretty gutsy, and then Marlon catches it? How'd y'all feel, parents?
Oh, goodness. Well, I tell you, not all of the trustee wives, but most of the trustee wives, they like sitting around Bobby because he actually see the play being drawn up, and they're like, what's going to happen? What they're doing next? Well, we're asking Bobby all these questions. And Bobby's like, catch it, Marlon, catch it. And I'm like, catch it. And so when he caught it, and, we're going crazy up there. We're going crazy.
I think you're right. At that time, if we don't steal a possession or get a possession back from them, it was kind of like Marlon said, it's kind of hard to stop Deshaun. He was really on fire. And I'm assuming what we were seeing was the same thing they were seeing down on the field as coaches. So that turned the game, and now it put us ahead and them chasing. And, when they did it, I was kind of shocked because that's something Saban doesn't really do. So it kind of took everybody by surprise. But we were very excited about it because we flipped the field, and Marlon kind of caught it, and so it was a really, really great moment for us at that time.
Let me tell you what a big Auburn man thought about it. And Jennifer, I think you and I were at the table. Birmingham Bar Foundation had a dinner, and I was the master of ceremonies, so I was sitting at the big dog table. And the speaker was Jimmy Rain, yellow fella, Mr. Auburn. And somehow this game and this play came up, and Jimmy Rain said, I thought that was the gutsiest call I had ever seen, and I wrote Nick Saban a letter and told him that. And nobody else asked the follow-up question, so I said, well, did you ever hear back from him? He said, no. So I guess Saban is just so focused, he didn't even have time to be a pen pal to a guy who's got $1 billion. So, Marlon, let me ask you, when you're playing defense and you're reading an offense, what is it you're looking for? What is it that you're trying to read that tells you this is going to be a run play, this is going to be a short route, it's going to be a deep route, it's going to that side, going to this side? Don't give away any secrets, but what are you looking for?
In the NFL, it's very unique based off the quarterback. I think, to me, initially, I'm trying to see, is there any tell that I can get away from the wide receiver or the quarterback as far as what they're doing, what they're going to say. At one point, Big Ben, I guess as he got later in his career, a lot of the signals and the different code words for wide receiver routes to run, he just started getting lazy and just telling them directly what route to run. So that always start there. Right? Is there any just obvious cheats that just, if he says he's going to run a post, I'm just going to listen there, and I'll just tell him he's going to run a post. So I always first start there of trying to figure out what can get said, and then after that, and I'll look at the formation, see what's going on with the formation. I figure out the call. I want to communicate with my safety, make sure he knows we're both playing the same thing, and then that kind of goes into the initial, and then I just get into the call and kind of get ready to do my job. As far as the pass, obviously I'm always thinking about the pass and the run. I'm honestly hoping the guys that are supposed to stop the run can handle the run, but I will say playing at Bama, Saban did not that was not even an option to be a covering corner or secondary. So tackling has never really been a problem. I'll tell you this story. This was the year Leonard Fournette was. I think he was probably on pace to win the Heisman. And it was you guys. It was just crazy. So me and Geno Smith, number 24, I forget what year, we were up just watching clips of him, and we were, one play Auburn guy jumped on his back and threw him off, and this, that, and the word. I'm like, Geno, you over here, we're over here. I'm not gonna lie, we were honestly a little bit scared. We're like, dude, that's gonna be you tomorrow. You're gonna be right there in that same spot. You're gonna be in that same exact spot, 1 by 5. And so we go out there in the game. Sure enough, I get in 1 by 5 yards away from the line of scrimmage, and I'm like, all right, I have this. While Saban had cornerbacks filling inside the gap right there, I'm not sure, but whatever, I'm basically at linebacker, and I get ready, the ball snaps, and Leonard Fournette's right there in the hole. I'm like, oh gosh. So then I go in there, close my eyes, and then I feel just weight on my shoulders, And I'm like, I think I got him. And I just start dropping my feet. And it ended up being a tackle for loss. And it was just a funny moment of just, you can do whatever you want to do on this football field. You just got to believe that you can do it. And so that was a very
All right, that
cool
gets me
moment.
to my final question for you, then I got to move on to you folks. Pros or college, I want three names. Who was the quarterback you least wanted to play against? Who was the receiver you least wanted to defend against? And who was the running back who was hardest to bring down?
All right. The quarterback one is tough. I'm going to give one in college. It had to be Deshaun Watson. I've never been that tired in a football game. It seemed like it was just play after play after play. We played them 2 years back to back in the national championship. Whether he was scrambling, it just seemed like you were just playing to, I love football, but I was like, man, somebody win the game or lose the game. So Deshaun Watson in college, and then in the pros, I probably have to say Patrick Mahomes or Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers just does so much checking at the line of scrimmage, figuring out this, getting in the best call, and then Mahomes somehow just wins games that he just should not win. And then as far as one of the hardest guys to tackle probably was Le'Veon Bell. I actually hit him. My shoulder went numb. I looked down. Like 20 seconds later, I had his towel in between my fingers and I couldn't even feel it because my whole arm, it just went numb. But luckily the sideline was there, so he ran me over, but he went out of bounds, so that counts as a tackle. And then wide receiver, I probably Antonio Brown as well. So yeah, a lot of Steelers, but Antonio Brown, he had me convinced that either he was either taking something illegal or he just trained way harder than me because he seemed like he never was breathing hard ever. And usually I'm the guy that is not breathing that hard and the guy in front of me is, so he just could run all day. So those are my.
How about King Henry? Before he was your teammate, did you ever have to tackle him when he was a Titan?
We held Derrick Henry to probably 30 yards one time, and the fourth quarter came, he ended with about 170. So, and then he had a walk-off overtime touchdown for the win. So I was very happy when he decided to sign on my team.
All right, Bobby, in high school, I do not know how you did this, but I read that when you were on Friday nights for the Glen High Hawks, you amassed 7,000 total yards. Is that true?
Yes,
Okay.
somewhere around there.
That was Friday nights, but on Saturdays, you were at Legion Field selling programs and soft drinks. Is that right?
Correct.
And I assume you stood in the stands at some point, passing some guy's coat down the row, thinking to yourself, I'm going to play on that field one day for the Crimson Tide. Did you have that thought?
I did have that thought.
And did you always assume you would play for Coach Bryant?
I assumed I was going to play for Coach Bryant.
Now, some of y'all
At
may
the
be
time
thinking, I'm
there.
going to ask Bobby, since Marlon played for Saban and Bobby played for Coach Bryant, to compare and contrast them, except Bobby never played for Coach Bryant. He retired, his last season, his last loss was to Auburn in the Iron Bowl, Bo Jackson's freshman year. Then the next game, Alabama won the Liberty Bowl.
That's right.
He retired.
That's
A reporter asked him, said, what are you going to do now that you retire? He said, well, I'll probably live about a week and then croak. He was off by 3 weeks. A month later, had a massive heart attack, so he died in early '83, and you went to Tuscaloosa in '85. You got there with his successor, Ray Perkins, and then he left eventually. He had Bill Curry. So talk about those two coaches. Did you have any reluctance to go to Alabama once Coach Bryant wasn't there anymore? And then what did you find with Perkins and Curry?
Well, I felt like I was already a part of Alabama because, of growing up right there across the street from the stadium, right there in Islington Village, the projects there. Mm-hmm. So, I parked cars, and as a younger, we even parked cars on the public street, and we were able to get money and get a tip. Right there in front of the projects. You just tell somebody, hey, I'll be here when you get back for your car. And as soon as they leave and go to the game, we leave too. But we made it back to that car when the game was over with and made sure nothing was wrong with their car. And, they just saw we were just some kids trying to make a buck or two. and they would give us a tip for watching their car. And so it was just all a part of me being a part of Alabama, because I grew up right there and attended a lot of the games just through, selling Cokes. And when I was a young boy, selling Cokes, I realized that, so many people wanted the ice. And this is where my brilliance come in, and this is why my wife married me, for my brilliance. So I decided that, you know what? They want ice. We don't have ice. So I went and pulled the Coke out of the drinks, and I had the ice. And I actually sold the ice for more than I sold the Coke, because it was a premium. Now later on in life, I found out why ice was so important to the people there up in the upper decks. But I can remember this here. When the other Coke boys, that were there with me, when I would say, hey, I'm gonna be down there one day, I'm gonna be down there one day. And they used to always say, no, you're not. And Marlon said something, if you got faith and believe in yourself, you can do anything on the football field. And, they didn't think I would ever be down there. And then when I got to Alabama, our first game at Legion Field, when we get to the stadium, the team will always get out, and we'll do the walk around, the field before we, go in the locker room. And I can remember in the south end zone, all of the Coke boys that I sold Coke with was down there in the end zone behind the fence. And when I came around, they would holler my name, and I went over and dapped them up, and they said, man, you did it. Man, you did it. Man, you said you was going to do it. So that was something that was really, really made me feel really, really good, because they didn't really, really believe that I could actually be down there one day, and it all came true.
Well, I want us to see one more bit of video. If it's a little grainier. This goes back 39 years. You rushed for 220 yards against the defending national champion Nittany Lions, and you ripped off a 73-yard touchdown run. And it's a little grainier than the video we saw with Marlon. But look for the guy. The shoulder pads are enormous. They were back then. He's got on a white jersey and white pants, and he just runs past everybody. So do we have that ready to go?
Bobby Humphrey back in the Alabama backfield. Penn State changing its front, going to an off. Here's Humphrey, cutting back in a tremendous hole as he breaks free. Bobby Humphrey loose. They won't catch it. Bobby Humphrey breaks a tackle and carries it in for the evening's first touchdown.
Now, he does get tackled in the end zone by all of his teammates. They pile on him. There they are.
Tremendous run by Bobby Humphrey.
Bobby, when's the last time you saw this video?
Somebody sent it to me around about Christmas. It came up on a social media thread, and they forwarded it to me. So I got a lot of friends in the room. They always send me texts and things like that. So it's always good to reminisce of this here. We had no shot to win this game. Penn State went undefeated, won a national championship, beat us the year prior to that in Legion Field. We were undefeated. That was our first loss in '86. They came to Bryant-Denny and beat us. And Bill Curry had just changed coaches. Perkins leave. Curry comes in, and nobody gave us a shot of winning this game. And we went there and we beat them on. Brent Musburger was calling the game, and it was on CBS, and it was prime time. And
Am I correct that you did not know you did that little spin move until you saw the film later?
I have no idea what I do sometime with the ball. I just try to make people miss. I don't want nobody to hit me.
And am I correct that after that game you went to the university's lawyers and got them to patent that spin move, so that years later, every time Eddie Lacy did it, you got royalties? Is that true?
Something like that.
All right, Bobby.
But let me explain about the shoulder pads now,
Okay.
because people are confused. The announcer said I changed my spikes on my shoes. No, that wasn't the case. My shoulder pad string had broken. So they throw some shoulder pads. Those are not my original shoulder pads. So when you look at those pads flopping all in the air, they're not mine. They someone else. I don't know who they was. They grabbed them off somebody on the sideline, and they popped them on me and put my jersey back on. So that's why the shoulder pads was all like they were, flapping around.
All right. After you retired from the NFL, you came back to town. You were in business, but then you came out of business to become the head coach of the Birmingham Steel Dogs. Is that something you applied for? Did people seek you out? Was it something that Barbara said okay to? And did it? You have any pause because you've never coached before, or your philosophy, if you can do it, you can coach it?
Wow. This short story. Okay, so I get invited to a golf tournament to play on a team that I have no idea who the guys I'm playing with. They were the guys who were bringing the arena football team to Birmingham. So they would start asking me all these weird questions while we were playing golf. So at the end of the day, they said, we want to invite you to lunch. At that particular time, I was working in the Tuscaloosa County school system. I was just about to roll off on a program that I started with, working with at-risk kids in the county. And I was working throughout the county schools in Tuscaloosa. And I started a program called Choices and Consequences. I didn't have a job. So I go to this, well, it wasn't an interview. I go to lunch with these guys who I played golf with the week prior. And so they started asking me these questions. They said, well, we want you to kind of help out and be a part and see if you mind coming and working for the new arena football team that's going to be here. And I was like, what do you think you guys might want me to do? And the general manager said, well, we want you to be the head coach. And I was like, the head coach? I said, well, I'm going to have to think about that. And I'm thinking to myself, wait a minute, I'm unemployed, and somebody just offered me a job. So, and this how supportive my wife is. After the lunch, I picked the phone, I called my wife. I said, honey, the lunch went great. She said, really? What did they talk about? I said, they just offered me the head coaching job for the Birmingham Steel Dogs, the arena team. She said, arena football? You don't know nothing about no arena football? So I said, I know, honey, but there's a game coming on TV because they had the AFL that was playing that time. So she recorded my first game of arena football, and I started studying. Needless to say that, I took the job and became the winner.
I got more questions for you, Bobby, but I got to move on. So, Barbara, you were a track star. You want to add something?
I just want to add one thing concerning Marlon and Coach Saban. So when he first started at Bama, I always say Coach Saban sets them up. He have them at his lake house, and they have the big time fun out on the water. Well, the night of that, the next day you're going in camp. The night of that, I called Marlon. I said, Marlon, how did it go? What do you think about Coach Saban? He goes, I don't know what everybody's talking about. I mean, he's cool. We had fun. I was on the back of the boat, and all the stuff that people say about him, I don't know anything. We had a ball. Well, the next day is camp. And Bobby and I, we're wondering, wonder how it went. So I said, I'm going to call Marlon. Then I said, you know what? I'm not going to call him because he's going to say, Mama's calling. Late that night, Marlon called me. I said, Marlon? He goes, Mom, Coach Saban cussed me out today. And I said, Marlon, he's serious about football. And that's all I had to say.
You were an outstanding high school athlete, but they did not have a track team at UAB. Is that right? They offered you a full scholarship, and you helped them.
They did not have a team, and so the UA system decided they wanted to add a women's sport to athletics, and they got an assistant coach from Auburn, and they offered him the women's track and field job. And he called me, John Parks. I had never heard of him or anything. He called me at my home, and he said, we're starting a program at UAB. I don't see where you sign anywhere. Would you like to be a part of that? And of course, I was absolutely, and that's how I got to UAB.
And your school record in the 400 meters still stands. All the Bobbies got a clip. Along came Sean Alexander. And then along came Derrick Henry, and then along came Najee Harris. So Bobby's just number 4 on the all-time list now.
Well,
how come you're still?
Well, let me tell you, I stopped.
He really gives me a hard time.
I used to go to some of the practices and things like that. Well, they called me and they said, we have a young lady that she's on pace to break your record. And so I said, you know what? I'm going to start going to practice and watch this young lady and all that. Well, the weekend they thought she was gonna break it, she got sick. So I was like, oh man, so we're gonna keep at it. Well, they got ready for conference. She got sick, and so they called me and said, maybe you don't need to come to any more of the practices. Well, she was a senior, and so she didn't get a chance to break it. Years go by, my daughter decides she ran track at UAB, and so I thought,
Britley or Brianna?
Brianna, and I thought, well, how cool would this be if my daughter broke it? So Brianna, she's, practicing, not quite on the level that I was, but I'm like, things can work out. Injury bug hit her. I think she had 2 years. She was hurt. So she never got it. She ended up, she said, Mom, I'm so tired of being hurt. So she didn't run her senior year, so she didn't break it. But my record's still holding on. I don't know. Still
All right,
holding.
I'm going to have to change the subject a little bit. You're on the Board of Trustees of
Yes.
the University of Alabama. Quick question, and if you can't answer it, that's fine. Did y'all have any advance warning that Coach Saban was going to retire? And then when he did y'all just defer to the AD and let Greg burn, or did y'all provide any input?
A wise man told me, he said, anytime you're dealing with someone that's 70 or older, any day they can change their mind. So I'm like, Well, the board, we had all talked a few years, maybe a couple of years back, we said, hey, we got to be realistic here. We know we won't win always. And we were like, oh man, because we were just riding just such a high wave. And during that week, I think maybe 2 days before the announcement was made, Greg Barnes said, I feel that something's going on. I don't know what's going on with our coach. Well, the day of the meeting, Coach Saban wasn't sure himself. Greg Barnes calls us and said he's either going to tell them the plan moving forward or he's going to retire. And before they can even get the word out, you tell some young people something's happening and they're not supposed to say a word, see how long that lasts. So before the meeting was even over, some of the players had already put it out on social media. So we really did not have,
All right, we
left it to Greg Barnes.
got very little time left, but I got to touch on NIL and the transfer portal and all the craziness that's going on. First, give us your perspective as a member of the Board of Trustees, and then Bobby Marlin, weigh in real quick what your thoughts are.
My personal thoughts, it's a wild, wild west. And I hate that we're where we are. We need someone to do something. I'm all for the players being paid, recognizing, NIL, I'm for that. But we have to have some type of regulations. It just can't continue the way that it is. And the transfer portal, it hurts me that you have guys that's in the transfer portal 3 and 4 times, and I'm like, are they ever going to graduate? So it's hurting our young people. So we got to have some type of regulation.
I agree. I'll let Marlon go last, but I think there needs to be some type of more structural contract. I would have loved it for Marlon to be able to bounce around from team to team and just up his ante in the NFL. The NFL has some structure there. You sign a 4-year deal and you're going to be there 4 years. Some of these, just bouncing around all over the place and going to a high bidder. And there's got to be something done with it. Now, I'm not saying don't pay the players, but figure out a way to have a little bit more stability in the whole situation.
Marlon, you get the last word.
I would say I think there's good sides to it, and then there's also bad sides to it. I think it's a little unrealistic to anything in life of just, I remember, I guess this whole transfer portal being able to move kind of almost started when I was there. It happened to one of the guys. I can't remember who he was. I think we went to church on like a Sunday or something, and we had the spring practice on that Saturday. We went to go check on the guy, and his entire apartment was cleaned out. And we were like, what happened? Next thing you know, he's at Ohio State. And that was back when you had to sit out. So it now transferred. Now you can get paid $50,000, not play for the team, and then just leave. So I think it's I think there's a way to do it. I think it just has to be kind of a good system. But I enjoyed, I had a moped. Not all the guys had a car, so If I went to the strip, they'd be like, I'm coming with them. I'm like, bro, I got a single seat. They're like, I'll just hop in the back. So I don't think those things are happening anymore with the money they're getting down there. But I really enjoyed my college experience. And I think if I had $100,000, $500,000, I'm going to be like, bro, drive your Mercedes. I'll drive my whatever I got. So I think some experiences kind of get missed with it. But I think there's a way to do it. And I think it'll happen soon.
Well, folks, I've got a lot more questions for these guys, and I wanted to get to questions from you, but that didn't happen. But let's thank these three Humphreys for a delightful program. Let me run over here real quick. I guess it's not official unless I sound the gong, so let me just remind everybody the deadline is tomorrow if you want to go to the Kiwanis Night at the museum. I want to thank all of the Humphreys family and thank Marlon for coming in from out of town. And remember, we do not meet next week, but come here, Beth Shelburne, and talk about the Alabama Solution documentary in 2 weeks.